Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to In the Office with Scott and Wallace. I'm Robert Scott. I missed last week, so it's nice to be back with you guys. And today we're going to talk a little bit about a hot topic that you see on the news. You've seen on the news for the last month, really. Luckily, it's come to an end, and it sounds like today we're not going to have another one. And what I'm talking about is the federal government shutdown. And so, whatever your opinions or political stances are, I think we all can agree that it's been a little bit immature what's happened in Washington, and that the impact that's, the trickle-down effect, I should say, that how it's affected everyday people, people who are employed by the federal government. It's really been quite remarkable, and I just feel terrible for them. But luckily, I think they're back to work. And so, Matt, I want to start with you because you're our employment lawyer, and talk a little bit about how this shutdown has affected federal employees. I can give some stats here. I see it's been about $9.5 billion of unpaid wages. But can you talk a little bit about what a federal worker's right is, if there's even a way to bring a claim, or even if that's necessary?
Right.
Based on what happened.
And in fact, the lawsuit's actually already been filed by the largest union in the whole country representing federal employees. Essentially, the rule of thumb is if you're a federal employee and they're making you go to work and perform work, then you need to be paid. You're required to be paid. So the lesson for employers is, over that time, if you weren't able to pay your employees, you shouldn't have been making them work, knowing that you couldn't pay them. The shutdown, while there's a lot of technicalities that go into everything, the very simple side of it is if you're working and you're a federal employee, then you're required to be paid. Like I said, there's already been a lawsuit filed seeking damages for violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which kind of governs payment to employees around the country for most all employees. So that's kind of the short ins and outs of it. While there's maybe a lot of fact patterns that could come up where if you're an employer who relies on government funds but you haven't received them and you're not paying employees, a lot of things could play into it. So obviously, as always, feel free to give us a call if you have a specific situation. But the long and short of it is, if you're required to work as a federal employee, then they're required to pay you.
Right. And so we saw, Clint, how the shutdown affected, like, for example, the airlines and airports, and TSA wasn't there. And I saw footage from national parks where there was trash, sprawled about that wasn't being picked up, and it was just everywhere, how it was impacting our country. But you want to talk a little bit about what we saw as far as the court system?
Yes, the federal courts get their funding in two ways. The most funding comes from Congress appropriating money. They also get funding from court fees, filing fees, and things like that. And so we were monitoring it, and we're getting emails from the federal court system. They were having to prioritize cases, and obviously criminal cases are going to be their priority there because there's rules about how quickly you have to prosecute those cases. So civil cases were taking a back burner to the criminal cases. Hopefully we can avoid another shutdown so it doesn't affect any of the federal cases that we have going currently.
That's right.
But that's something we were monitoring. Last week we talked about, Matt and I did, the National Transportation Safety Board. Again, that's the agency with the government that investigates any fatalities on the roadway. And that was shut down. They weren't investigating any of the fatalities during the shutdown period. So there's valuable information about how to prevent future accidents that they didn't glean from the accidents they didn't investigate. So.
Right, so it sounds like today maybe our elected officials in Washington have gotten their act together, so to speak, and maybe we will avoid another shutdown. But as we've talked about briefly today, when the government shuts down, it affects not just those folks in Washington, but everyday people who are relying on a paycheck from the federal government or have cases pending in our federal court system. So, we hope to avoid that, obviously.
Sure.
Any questions at all, Megan, or anything we need to address?
I see.
Okay, well, if you have any questions about the shutdown or anything else, don't hesitate to contact us. And with that, we'll be back next Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
I guess we'll shut it down for the day.
That's right.
All right, thanks guys.
Thank you.